Horrifying. A woman on the verge of freezing to death under a Chicago bridge, with only her last faint breaths left in the bone-cutting wind, becomes the mama of 4 children who have never spoken a single word in 4 long years. She just stood there. She just looked at them. She just smiled. And 4 mouths that had been silent as graves, all whispered at once, "Mama, the most powerful man in Chicago, the one who once made the entire city tremble," drops to his knees on the floor, tears streaming, staring at the woman he just pulled up from the hell of the streets, stammering in a mix of horror and overwhelming joy. "You did what millions of dollars, hundreds of doctors, and thousands of days and nights of mine could never do. This is not a fairy tale. This is real tragedy. Blood, betrayal, death brushing right past, and a love so terrifying that both of them tremble when they realize they can no longer live without each other. Do you dare to hear the rest of the story about the homeless woman who brought an entire criminal empire to its knees begging for forgiveness and love? Before we dive into this chilling and mysterious story, please remember to subscribe to the channel Alex Truths and like this video. Every subscription, like, and share from you is a huge spiritual gift and an incredibly profound source of motivation for the channel's growth, so we can continue bringing wonderful videos every day to everyone. There would be no greater joy than receiving your love and support through the comments you leave right below this video. Comments sharing your emotions or telling us which province or city you're living and working in while listening to this story. Alright, let's continue together and immerse ourselves in this amazing, captivating story that's filled with deep emotions. My name is Elena Harper, and on the last freezing night of October, 2025, I believed the city of Chicago would finally swallow me whole. I was 31 years old, but hunger and cold had carved me down to something smaller, something that looked 25 in the wrong light and 40 in the mirror. My coat, once navy wool, now threadbare gray, was held together with duct tape at the elbows. My boots leaked through cracked soles, letting the slush soak my socks until my feet felt like blocks of ice wrapped in wet cotton. I had not eaten anything solid since the half-stale bagel I'd fished from a dumpster behind a bakery on Division Street 2 days earlier. My stomach had stopped growling. It simply ached, a dull, constant fist pressing against my ribs. I slept where I could under the viaduct near the Chicago River, when the wind wasn't too cruel, or curled in the doorway of an abandoned storefront on West Division, when the police chased the other homeless folks away. Tonight the wind won. It sliced through the thin blanket I'd tied around my shoulders like a cape, and found every gap in my clothing. My teeth chattered so hard my jaw hurt. I pressed my back against the concrete pillar, hugging my knees, trying to become smaller, trying to disappear. That was when I heard the tires. Not the usual slow crawl of a squad car or the impatient honk of late-night delivery vans. These tires rolled with purpose, slow, deliberate, expensive. A long black SUV eased to the curb less than 20 feet from where I sat shivering. The windows were tinted so dark they looked like sheets of obsidian. The engine idled with the low, expensive purr of something built to carry power, not people. I should have run. Every instinct born from 4 years on these streets screamed at me to run. But my legs were numb, my body too heavy with cold and exhaustion. All I could do was stare. The rear door opened. A man stepped out. He was tall, broad-shouldered, fair-skinned, wearing a charcoal overcoat that looked as if it had been tailored while someone whispered money into its seams. His hair was dark, neatly combed back, touched with silver at the temples. His eyes, storm gray, unreadable, swept the street once, then settled on me. I felt the gaze like a physical touch. My heart slammed against my ribs so hard I tasted copper. He did not speak at first. He simply stood there looking down at me, curled against the pillar like a wounded animal. Then in a voice low and calm, the kind of voice that expected obedience without ever rising, he said, "You're freezing." I swallowed. My throat was dry as sandpaper. I'm fine, sir." The word sir slipped out automatically, polite, timid, the way my mother taught me to speak to anyone who looked like they had more than I did. I hated how small it made me sound. He tilted his head slightly. "You don't look fine." I tried to stand. My knees buckled. The world tilted. Dizziness rushed in like black water. I caught myself against the pillar palms, scraping rough concrete. Pain flared in my fingers. He moved, then quick, controlled steps, and before I could flinch, he was kneeling in front of me, one knee on the filthy sidewalk, expensive wool coat brushing the slush. Up close, he smelled of cedar and leather, and something faintly metallic like gun oil or money. His face was handsome in a hard way, carved from years of decisions no one should have to make. "My name is Vincent Moretti," he said quietly, "and you're coming with me." I laughed, a cracked, hysterical sound. I don't know you. You don't need to know me yet." He reached into his coat and pulled out a thick wool scarf, soft cashmere, the color of midnight. Without asking, he draped it around my shoulders. The warmth was immediate, shocking, almost painful after so many nights of nothing. But you will die out here tonight if you stay. Tears burned behind my eyes. I hated them. I hated how easily they came now, how little pride I had left to hold them back. Why would you care? He did not answer right away. His gaze moved over me, taking in the duct-taped coat, the hollow cheeks, the way my hands trembled even under the new scarf. Something flickered in his eyes, something raw and unguarded gone so fast I might have imagined it. Because I know what it feels like to watch someone you couldn't save waste away, he said finally, voice rougher now. And I'm not doing it again. He stood and extended his hand. I stared at it, strong, clean nails, manicured a heavy silver ring on the third finger. Then I looked at my own hand, cracked skin dirt under the nails, shaking so badly I could barely make a fist. I should have refused. Every story I'd ever heard about men in black SUVs ended badly for women like me. But the cold was eating me alive. The hunger was a living thing inside my ribs, and something in his eyes, something that looked like guilt, like remorse, carved so deep it had become part of the bone, made me believe against every instinct that he was not lying. I placed my trembling hand in his. His fingers closed around mine, warm, firm, careful not to crush. He pulled me up slowly, steadying me when my knees threatened to give out again. The dizziness returned in waves. I swayed against him, cheek brushing the lapel of his coat. He smelled like safety and danger at the same time. Easy, he murmured. I've got you. He guided me to the open door of the SUV. Inside, the leather seats were heated. The air was warm, scented faintly with pine. A soft blanket waited on the seat beside me. A bottle of water and a wrapped sandwich, real food, turkey and cheese on thick bread sat on the console. I stared at it like it might disappear if I blinked. Eat, he said, simply sliding in beside me. The door closed with a heavy, expensive thud. The driver pulled away from the curb without a word. I unwrapped the sandwich with shaking fingers. The first bite was so good it hurt salty, warm real. Tears slid down my cheeks as I chewed. I tried to hide them, turning my face toward the window, but Vincent saw. He did not comment. He simply looked out his own window, jaw-tight fingers drumming once against his thigh before going still. We drove through the glittering streets of the Gold Coast, past mansions that looked like museums, past doormen in uniforms, past lives I had never touched. The SUV turned into a gated driveway lined with ancient oaks. Iron gates swung open silently. Security lights swept across manicured lawns, stone fountains, a house so large it seemed to rise out of the darkness like a mountain. When the vehicle stopped, Vincent got out first and came around to my side. He opened the door and offered his hand again. This time I took it without hesitation. He led me up wide marble steps through double doors that opened into a foyer the size of the apartment I'd lost 3 winters ago. Crystal chandelier, polished wood floors, a staircase that curved upward like something from a movie. And silence. Deep, heavy silence, the kind that presses against your ears. A woman in a neat uniform appeared older, kind-eyed. "Sir, prepare the guest suite," Vincent said. "Warm bath, clean clothes, food. She hasn't eaten properly in days." The woman nodded and vanished. Vincent turned to me. "You're safe here, Elena." I blinked. "How do you know my name?" I asked around. His voice was quiet. "The shelters, the outreach workers. People talk when they're worried." I felt exposed, peeled open. "Why? Because I saw you 3 nights ago," he said, and the confession seemed to cost him something. "You were sitting on the bench outside, Street Michael's, staring at nothing. You looked like someone I failed once." I couldn't walk away again. His eyes, those storm-gray eyes, were suddenly bright with something that looked dangerously close to tears. "I don't understand," I whispered. "You don't have to yet." He stepped closer, voice dropping. "But I need you to know this. Whatever happens next, I will not let anyone hurt you. Not again. Not while I'm breathing." The words landed like stones in still water. Ripples of shock, confusion, terror, and God help me, something warm and terrifyingly hopeful spread through my chest. I wanted to run. I wanted to stay. I wanted to cry until there was nothing left. Instead, I stood there, small and shivering in my duct-taped coat, wrapped in his cashmere scarf, staring up at the most dangerous and most broken man I had ever met. And somewhere deep inside, in the place where hope had died long ago, a tiny, foolish spark flickered back to life. Vincent Moretti looked at me as though I were something precious he had almost lost forever. And in that moment, against every rule of survival I had ever learned, I felt the first dangerous stirrings of something I had no name for yet. Something that felt suspiciously like the beginning of love. The marble foyer swallowed sound the way deep water swallows light. My socked feet, still damp from the slush outside, left faint wet prints on the polished floor that disappeared almost as soon as they appeared, as if the house itself refused to acknowledge my existence. I stood there, clutching Vincent's cashmere scarf like a life preserver, the wool still warm from his neck, while the woman in the neat gray uniform, Mrs. Callahan, she'd introduced herself softly, led me up the curving staircase. Every step felt like trespassing. The guest suite was on the second floor at the end of a hallway lined with framed black and white photographs of people I did not recognize. Stern men in fedoras, women in elegant dresses from another decade, children who looked too serious for childhood. Mrs. Callahan opened a pair of double doors and stepped aside. I stopped breathing. The room was larger than the entire efficiency apartment I had lost to back rent 2 winters ago. A 4-poster bed dominated the center, draped in cream linens so crisp they looked as though no one had ever slept in them. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked a private garden lit by soft landscape, lights, rose bushes pruned into perfect spheres, a stone fountain silent in the October chill. A fireplace already crackled with low flames. On a low table beside an armchair sat a silver tray steaming chamomile tea, a plate of sliced apples and cheese, a small crystal bowl of honey. I could smell the honey. My knees trembled. I gripped the doorframe. Mrs. Callahan's voice was gentle, practiced. "There are fresh towels in the bathroom, miss. The tub is filling." I laid out night clothes and a robe on the chaise. "If you need anything at all, pull the cord by the bed." She curtsied, actually curtsied, and left me alone. The door clicked shut behind her. I stood motionless for what felt like hours, though the grandfather clock in the hall had only ticked through 3 minutes. My reflection stared back at me from the cheval mirror across the room. Hollow cheeks, cracked lips, hair matted from nights under the viaduct, eyes too large and a face too small. I looked like a ghost who had wandered into the wrong life. I took 1 step, then another. The carpet was so thick my feet sank. I touched the edge of the bed, soft, impossibly soft, and snatched my hand back as though it had burned me. This could not be real. People like me did not walk into places like this. People like me were chased away from places like this. I sank to the floor beside the bed, knees drawn to my chest, and let the tears come silent at first. Then ragged, ugly sobs that shook my whole body. The hunger, the cold, the endless nights of wind clawing at my coat, the humiliation of digging through trash behind restaurants, while well-dressed couples laughed on the sidewalk above me. It all rose up at once and tore through me like a blade. I cried until my throat was raw, until the fire had burned low, until exhaustion finally dragged me under. When I woke, the room was dim. Someone had turned down the lights and placed a thick quilt over me where I lay curled on the rug. The tray had been refreshed, the tea was gone, replaced by warm milk and a small plate of shortbread cookies. I ate 1 cookie so slowly it felt like sacrilege. The butter melted on my tongue. I closed my eyes and tasted something I had forgotten: safety. A soft knock came at the door. I startled, heart slamming. "Come in," I whispered. Vincent Moretti stepped inside. He had changed clothes, dark sweater, charcoal slacks, sleeves pushed to the elbows. In the low light, he looked younger, almost vulnerable, though the hard lines of his jaw and the silver at his temples reminded me who he was. He carried a small leather folder under one arm. He saw me on the floor and stopped. "You didn't use the bed," he said quietly. I didn't want to ruin it." His gaze flickered, something sharp and pained, then softened. "It's yours to use, Elena. All of this is..." I swallowed. "I don't understand why." He crossed the room slowly, as though approaching something easily startled, and crouched a few feet away. "I told you. I saw you 3 nights ago. You were sitting on that bench outside street, Michael's staring at the river like it might carry you away. I've seen that look before." He looked down at his hands, fingers flexing once. "My sister. She was 19. She ran away after our father. After things happened. I searched for 6 months, found her too late. She had been living on the streets, malnourished, sick. She died in a shelter bed while I was still trying to get her into a private hospital." The confession hung between us like smoke. Vincent's voice dropped lower. I swore I would never walk past someone like that again. Not if I could do something. Tears burned behind my eyes again. "I'm not your sister." "No," he said roughly. "You're not, but you're someone's daughter. Someone's sister. Someone who deserves more than freezing under a bridge." He opened the leather folder and placed it on the carpet between us. Inside were photographs, grainy surveillance images of 3 different men standing outside a warehouse on the west side. One of them I recognized, Tony Russo, the man who had promised me a warm meal and a place to sleep 3 weeks ago, then taken my last $20 and left me locked in a storage unit overnight. Vincent's eyes were hard now. These men have been preying on women in shelters and on the streets. They take what little they have, sometimes worse. I've been dealing with them. I felt the blood drain from my face. You're going to hurt them. I'm going to make sure they never hurt anyone again. His voice was calm, almost gentle. Not with violence if it can be avoided. But they will leave this city tonight. I stared at him. Why show me? Because I want you to know I'm not a saint, he said. I'm not clean, but I protect what's mine. And from the moment I pulled you into that car, you became mine to protect. The words landed like a physical blow. Mine. No one had ever said that to me, and meant it in kindness. I looked at him, really looked. The storm-gray eyes that held so much guilt, they seemed to drown in it. The hands that could destroy lives, and yet had wrapped a scarf around my shoulders with infinite care. The powerful shoulders bowed slightly as though carrying a weight no one else could see. Something inside me cracked open, sharp, violent, terrifying. I wanted to run. I wanted to crawl into his arms and never leave. He must have seen the war on my face because he reached out slowly, palm up, not touching me, just offering. I won't ask you to trust me tonight, he said. I only ask you to stay until morning. One night under a real roof. One night without wind. One night where no one can touch you. My hand shook as I placed it in his. His fingers closed around mine, warm, steady, careful. The touch was electric. It burned straight through every wall I had built, every layer of suspicion and fear and shame. I felt dizzy again, but not from hunger this time. From the sheer force of being seen, being wanted, being safe. Vincent helped me stand. My legs were weak. He steadied me with an arm around my waist, gentle, respectful, yet possessive, in a way that made my heart stutter. He guided me to the bed, pulled back the covers, waited until I slid beneath them. The sheets smelled of lavender and clean cotton. He tucked the quilt around me with the same careful precision he might use to handle something fragile and priceless. Sleep, he whispered. I'll be downstairs. No one will come near this door. He turned to leave. Vincent. He paused at the threshold. Thank you, I said, voice so small it barely carried. He looked back at me, and for one heartbeat his face was raw, open, aching, stripped of every mask. Don't thank me yet, he said hoarsely. I haven't earned it. The door closed softly. I lay in the dark heart, hammering tears, sliding silently into the pillow. Outside, far below, I heard the low growl of engines, more black SUVs leaving the gates. I heard raised voices, sharp and tense, then silence. Somewhere in the city, men who had hurt women like me were being confronted by the most dangerous man in Chicago. And that man had just placed me in the safest room in the world. I pressed my face into the pillow and cried again, not from misery this time, but from something far more dangerous. Hope. And from the first terrifying bloom of a love so fierce and sudden it felt like falling from a great height. I had no name for it yet, but it was already burning me alive. Morning came to the Gold Coast mansion, in soft golden layers, sunlight filtering through heavy silk curtains, warming the cream walls until the room felt like something dreamed up rather than lived in. I woke slowly, body heavy, with the kind of sleep I had not known in years, deep, dreamless, the kind that stitches broken things back together without asking permission. My first thought was terror. I sat up too fast. The quilt slid to my waist. The bed was enormous. I had curled into the smallest corner of it as though afraid to take up space that did not belong to me. My muscles ached, not the sharp, familiar ache of cold and hunger, but the dull protest of a body that had finally rested after too long without. I looked down at myself. Someone had changed me in the night, Mrs. Callahan, no doubt, into soft flannel pajamas, the color of pale lavender. They were too big. The sleeves swallowed my hands, the pant legs pooled at my ankles. I had never worn anything so clean, so new, so gentle against skin, that had known only rough wool and wind for months. The tray beside the bed held fresh coffee in a porcelain cup, a small pitcher of cream, a plate of warm blueberry muffins, sliced strawberries, and a single perfect poached egg. Steam rose from everything. The smell made my stomach clench so violently I pressed a hand to my ribs to keep from crying out. I ate like someone afraid the food might vanish. Small bites, careful. Each one felt like stealing. When the knock came, I startled so hard the coffee cup rattled against its saucer. Come in, I whispered. Vincent stepped inside. He wore a dark gray shirt open at the throat, sleeves rolled to the forearms, revealing the corded strength beneath. His hair was still damp from a shower. A faint scent of cedar followed him into the room. He stopped just inside the door, eyes sweeping over me, taking in the oversized pajamas, the way I clutched the quilt like a shield, the half-eaten muffin in my trembling fingers. You slept, he said. It was not a question. I nodded. My voice came out small, hoarse. I haven't slept like that in a very long time, sir. The sir slipped out again, automatic deferential. I hated it, but I could not stop it. Vincent's jaw tightened. Something dark flashed across his face, remorse maybe, or anger at himself. He crossed the room and sat in the armchair opposite the bed. Elbows on his knees, hands clasped so tightly the knuckles whitened. I had business last night, he said quietly. The men from those photographs, they're gone from the city. They won't come back. I stared at him. You made them leave. I gave them a choice. His voice was low controlled. They chose wisely. Silence stretched between us, thick, heavy, full of things neither of us could name yet. Then Vincent spoke again, softer. I want to show you something. He stood and offered his hand. I hesitated. Every instinct still screamed danger, but the hand that had pulled me from under the viaduct last night was steady, patient. I placed my palm in his. He led me down the hallway, past closed doors, past the photographs of stern faces. We descended a narrower staircase at the back of the house, one I had not noticed before. The air grew warmer, softer, scented with baby powder and clean laundry. At the bottom was a wide, sunlit room, the nursery. 4 cribs stood in a gentle arc, each one outfitted with soft blue bedding, tiny mobiles of stars and moons turning lazily overhead. Medical equipment hummed quietly, monitors feeding pumps, adaptive chairs with padded supports. 4 small boys lay in the cribs, identical, fragile, fair-haired like their father. They were perhaps 4 years old, but their bodies were thin, underdeveloped, legs still and unmoving beneath thin blankets. My heart squeezed so hard I could not breathe. Vincent stopped at the doorway. His shoulders were rigid, his breathing shallow. Luca, Marco, Nico, Matteo, he said, voice cracking on each name. My sons. I looked at him. The powerful man who had made dangerous men disappear from Chicago overnight stood trembling eyes fixed on the children as though looking at them might shatter him. They were born 4 years ago, this October, he continued. Maria, my wife, did not survive the delivery. The boys, they came too early, too small. The doctor said they would never walk, never speak, never progress. He swallowed. I believed them. I locked this room away. I locked myself away. I told myself if I controlled everything else, the business, the streets, the city, I could control the pain, but I couldn't control this. His voice broke entirely on the last word. One of the boys, Luca, I would learn later, turned his head slightly toward the doorway. His eyes storm gray like his father's found me. Then impossibly a sound. Soft, fragile, barely more than breath. Mama. The word floated into the room like a feather. I froze. Another boy, Marco, moved his lips, struggling, then whispered the same sound. Mama. Then Nico. Then Matteo. All 4 of them, eyes fixed on me, small mouths forming the word over and over, faint, broken, but real. Vincent made a sound, half sob, half choke. He staggered back, 1 step, hand gripping the doorframe so hard the wood creaked. I could not move. My chest hurt. My vision blurred with tears. These children silent, still locked away like secrets were speaking. To me, Vincent's face was raw, stripped bare. Tears tracked silently down his cheeks. He looked at me as though I had reached into his chest and restarted a heart that had stopped years ago. They've never... His voice shattered. They've never made a sound. Not once. Not for me. Not for anyone. He stepped forward, slow shaking, and knelt beside the nearest crib. He reached out, hesitated, then touched Matteo's small hand. The boy turned his head toward his father. A tiny, trembling breath. Dada. Vincent's shoulders shook. He bowed his head, forehead resting against the crib rail, tears falling onto the blanket. I stood rooted in the doorway, heart hammering so violently I thought it might crack my ribs. Horror. Awe. Confusion. A wild, burning hope I had no right to feel. These children had called me Mama. Me, Elena Harper, who had slept under bridges, who had eaten from dumpsters, who had nothing to give anyone. Vincent lifted his head. His eyes found mine, red-rimmed, fierce, overflowing. You did this, he whispered. You walked into this house and they spoke. I shook my head, tears streaming. I didn't do anything. You were here, he said. You were kind. You... He stood, slowly crossed the room and stopped inches from me. The air between us crackled, electric, dangerous, alive. Vincent reached up, brushed a tear from my cheek with his thumb. The touch was gentle, reverent, but beneath it burned something fierce and unstoppable. I have spent years building walls, he said hoarsely. Walls around them. Walls around me. And you walked through every one of them without even trying. His hand lingered on my face, warm, trembling. I don't know what this is, he whispered. But I know I cannot let you leave. Not now. Not ever. My breath caught. The room spun, dizziness, numbness, a violent rush of emotion, so intense it felt like falling. I wanted to run. I wanted to fall into him. I wanted to believe that someone like him could love someone like me. Vincent's other hand came up, cupped my face, thumbs tracing the hollows of my cheeks. "I have never believed in miracles," he said, "until this moment." He leaned in slowly, giving me every chance to pull away. I did not. Our foreheads touched. His breath mingled with mine, warm, ragged. "I will protect you," he whispered. "I will protect them. And God help me, Elena, I will spend the rest of my life trying to deserve this." Outside, far below, engines growled again, more SUVs, more men, more shadows of the life he led. But in that sunlit nursery, with 4 small voices still whispering "Mama" like a prayer, something sacred had begun. And I, the woman who had nothing, felt the first terrifying, glorious stirrings of everything. The nursery light had softened to late afternoon gold by the time Vincent finally released my face. His thumbs lingered one last heartbeat on my cheeks, then fell away as though the touch had scorched him. He stepped back, putting space between us, space that felt colder than any October wind I had ever known under the viaduct. The 4 small voices had fallen quiet again, but the echo of Mama and that single trembling Dada still hung in the air like smoke from a dying fire. Luca's eyes followed me wide and calm. Marco's tiny fingers twitched against the blanket. The miracle had happened, and now the weight of it pressed down on both of us until breathing felt like an effort. Vincent turned toward the window. His shoulders rose and fell in a rhythm that looked painful. When he spoke, his voice was rough, scraped raw. "I need you to tell me how you did it." I blinked, confusion flooding in behind the awe. I didn't do anything, sir." He spun back to face me. The storm-gray eyes were no longer soft. They burned fierce, accusing, desperate. "Don't call me that," he said sharply. "Not, sir. Not here. Not after." He gestured helplessly toward the cribs. "Not after they spoke because you walked into the room." My throat closed. I wrapped my arms around myself, the oversized pajamas suddenly feeling like borrowed armor that did not fit. I only stood there. I looked at them. That's all. Vincent crossed the space between us in 2 strides. He stopped close, too close, his chest rising and falling fast. "You looked at them the way no one else has in 4 years. Not the nurses. Not the doctors. Not me." His voice cracked on the last word. He turned away again, raking a hand through his hair. "I have spent millions on specialists. I flew in experts from Boston, from New York. Machines, therapies, experimental treatments. And nothing. Not one sound. Not one flicker of response." He laughed, a short, bitter sound. "And then you. A woman I pulled off the street last night. You walk in, and they call you Mama." The word hit me like a slap. I flinched. Tears stung again, hot and sudden. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "I didn't mean to. Don't apologize." He whirled back. "Don't you dare apologize for giving them something I couldn't." Silence fell thick, suffocating. Outside, a distant car horn sounded from the Gold Coast streets, a reminder that the world kept moving while we stood frozen in this impossible moment. Vincent paced once, twice, then stopped. His hands clenched into fists at his sides. "Tell me what you did. Exactly. Every detail. I need to understand." I swallowed hard. My voice came out small, timid the way it always did when I spoke to someone who held power over me. I came down the stairs with you. I saw them. They looked so small. So alone. I pressed a hand to my chest. I felt like I knew that feeling. Being small, being forgotten. So I just looked at them. Really looked. And I smiled. I think I smiled. I didn't say anything. I was too afraid to speak. Vincent stared at me. Something shifted in his expression, anger, giving way to something deeper, more dangerous. Wonder, pain, hunger. "You smiled," he repeated as though testing the word for truth. I nodded. Tears slipped down my cheeks. "That's all." He closed his eyes. When he opened them again, they were wet. "That's all," he echoed hoarsely. 4 years of silence, and all it took was someone who saw them. Someone who wasn't afraid to let them see her back. He stepped closer again. This time he did not touch me. He simply stood there inches away, letting me feel the heat of him, the storm inside him. "I should be grateful," he said quietly. "I should be on my knees thanking you. But all I can feel is..." He laughed again, softer, more broken. "Jealousy, rage, guilt so thick it chokes me, because they looked at you, they spoke to you. And I've been right here the whole time, and they never once." His voice shattered. He turned his face away, jaw working. I reached out before I could stop myself. My fingers brushed his sleeve, tentative, trembling. "They said Dada to you," I whispered. "They know you." Vincent looked down at my hand on his arm. Then slowly, carefully, he covered my fingers with his own. The warmth of his palm swallowed mine completely. "They said it once," he murmured, "because you were here. Because you made it safe for them to try." The words hung between us, simple, devastating. I felt the ground shift beneath me again. Dizziness swept in, not from hunger this time, but from the sheer force of what was happening. This man, this powerful broken man, was looking at me as though I held the key to everything he had lost. And I, who had nothing, felt the first terrifying certainty that I wanted to be that key for him. Vincent lifted my hand to his lips. He pressed a kiss to my knuckles, slow, reverent, burning. When he spoke against my skin, his voice was barely audible. "I don't deserve this," he said. "I don't deserve you walking into my life and giving my sons their voices. I don't deserve the way my heart is tearing itself apart right now just looking at you." He raised his eyes to mine. The storm inside them had become a hurricane. "But I want it," he whispered. "God help me, Elena. I want it more than I've ever wanted anything." My breath caught. The room narrowed to the space between us, his hand holding mine, his gaze locked on my face, the quiet hum of the monitors behind us. I felt it then, the surge. Overwhelming. Passionate. Burning from the very first moment it touched me. Love. Not soft. Not gentle. Fierce. Violent. The kind that rips through every defense and leaves you exposed, bleeding alive. I swayed. He caught me, arms around my waist, strong and sure. My forehead fell against his chest. I could hear his heart hammering beneath the dark shirt, as fast and frantic as my own. "Stay," he said against my hair. "Please, just stay." I nodded into his chest. Tears soaked the fabric. "I don't know how to be here," I whispered. "I don't know how to belong in a place like this." Vincent tightened his hold. "You belong because they need you. Because I need you." He pulled back just enough to look at me. His thumbs brushed away my tears, again gentle but trembling with restraint. "But there are rules," he said quietly. "My world, it's not safe. There are men who would use anything, anyone to hurt me. I won't let them touch you. But I need you to promise me something." I looked up at him, eyes wide. "If I tell you to go to the safe room, you go. No questions. No hesitation. If I tell you to stay inside, you stay. I will protect you with everything I have. But you have to trust me to do it." Fear flickered through me, cold, sharp, but beneath it burned something stronger. "I trust you," I whispered. Vincent exhaled a shaky, relieved sound. He leaned down and pressed his forehead to mine again. "Then we start here," he said. "One day at a time. You, me, them." He glanced toward the cribs. The boys were watching us, quiet still, but present in a way they had not been before. Vincent's voice dropped to a rough whisper. "I'm terrified, Elena. I've never been this terrified in my life. Not when guns were pointed at me. Not when deals went wrong. But this feeling, this need to keep you safe, to keep them safe, to keep whatever this is alive, it's tearing me apart." He kissed my forehead, soft, lingering, and I wouldn't trade it for anything. Outside tires crunched on the gravel drive. Engines growled low. Voices rose, tense, urgent. Vincent stiffened. He released me slowly, reluctantly. "Stay here," he said. "With them. I'll be back." He crossed to the door, paused, looked back at me with eyes full of fire and fear, and something so deep it stole my breath. "I'm not letting you go," he said. "Not now. Not ever." The door closed behind him. I sank into the rocking chair beside the cribs, knees weak, heart pounding. The boys watched me. Mama Luca whispered again, so soft I almost missed it. I reached through the rail and touched his hand. Tears fell freely now. I had come from nothing, from cold nights and empty hunger and shame so deep it lived in my bones. And now impossibly I was here. Loved, needed, terrified, alive. And somewhere downstairs in the shadows of his empire, Vincent Moretti was fighting to keep this fragile miracle from being torn away. While inside me, the love that had ignited in the space of a single day burned brighter, hotter, more dangerously than anything I had ever known. I closed my eyes and let it consume me. The nursery grew quieter as the October sun dipped lower, painting the walls in long amber strokes that made everything feel suspended, as though time itself had paused to watch us. I stayed in the rocking chair beside the cribs long after Vincent left my hand, resting lightly on Luca's blanket. The boys had drifted back into stillness, their breathing soft and even, but every so often one of them would twitch a finger or turn a small head toward me as if checking that I had not vanished. I could not leave them. I could not leave this room. My body ached with the strangeness of safety muscles. Unused to softness, bones still remembering concrete and wind. My stomach, full for the first time in weeks, felt heavy and foreign. Every breath carried the faint scent of baby lotion and clean cotton scents so clean they almost hurt. I rose slowly, legs unsteady, and wandered the edges of the room. The nursery was vast yet intimate shelves lined with untouched board books, a changing table, stocked with diapers still in their plastic wrapping, a window seat piled with pillows no one had ever leaned against. Everything waited frozen in the moment Maria had last prepared it 4 years ago. My fingers brushed the edge of a low built-in bookshelf near the corner. Dust had gathered there, fine and undisturbed. Something caught the light, a small wooden box no bigger than a jewelry case half hidden behind a stack of folded receiving blankets. I hesitated. My hand trembled. This was not my place. This was not my life. Yet curiosity, sharp, insistent, won. I pulled the box free and opened it with careful fingers. Inside lay a small leather-bound journal, edges worn soft from handling. A faded ribbon marked a page near the middle. I lifted it out, heart pounding so loudly I feared it would wake the boys. The handwriting was elegant, feminine, full of loops and flourishes. Maria's I knew without being told. The first pages held lists, baby names circled and crossed out, measurements for crib bedding, a recipe for Chicago-style deep dish pizza, with notes in the margin, extra sauce for Vincent, he always wants more. My chest tightened. This was a woman who had loved fiercely, who had planned a future that never came. I turned to the ribbon-marked page. A lullaby. Handwritten lyrics, simple and tender. Hush now, my little ones, close your eyes so tight, Mama's watching over you through the softest night. Stars are winking down on you. Moon is smiling wide. Sleep, my darlings. Sleep in love. You safely hide. Beneath the words, a single line in smaller script. For when I'm not there to sing it myself. Tears blurred the ink. I pressed a hand to my mouth to stifle the sob that rose. I looked back at the boys. They slept peacefully now, faces turned toward the fading light. I began to hum softly at first, then stronger. The melody came easily, as though it had been waiting inside me all along. My voice was thin from disuse, cracked from cold nights shouting against the wind, but it carried the tune. Luca stirred first. His eyes fluttered open. Then Marco. Nico. Matteo. All four watched me, wide-eyed, small mouths parting slightly. I sang the words. Hush now, my little ones. Marco made a soft sound in his throat, not a word but an attempt. A tiny broken note. I kept singing. By the second verse, Luca's fingers moved slowly, deliberately reaching toward the rail of his crib. I finished the lullaby. Silence fell thick and reverent. Then Matteo whispered it, one word faint but clear. Mama. The others followed like echoes. Mama. Mama. My knees gave out. I sank to the carpet, journal clutched to my chest, tears streaming unchecked. Footsteps sounded on the stairs, heavy, hurried. Vincent appeared in the doorway, coat still on hair, wind-blown face pale. He saw me on the floor, the open box, the journal in my hands. He froze. Where did you find that? His voice was barely above a whisper. I held it out to him with shaking hands. It was behind the blankets. I didn't mean to pry. I'm sorry. He crossed the room in 3 strides and knelt beside me. He took the journal gently, reverently, as though it might dissolve. His fingers traced the cover, then opened to the lullaby page. His breath caught. She wrote this, he said hoarsely. Every night when she was pregnant, she'd sit right there, he nodded toward the rocking chair, and sing it. Over and over. She said it was for them, in case. He could not finish. I watched his face, crumple, strong, powerful Vincent Moretti, the man who commanded fear across Chicago, breaking open in front of me. He looked at the boys. They were awake now, eyes fixed on him, on me, on the journal between us. Vincent's voice cracked. Sing it again. I swallowed. I don't want to, please. The plea in his voice undid me. I sang. This time Vincent joined, low, rough, unsteady at first, then stronger. His voice blended with mine, grief and love woven together in every note. The boys moved, more fingers twitching, heads turning, small sounds rising in their throats. When the last note faded, silence wrapped around us like a blanket. Vincent set the journal aside. He reached for my hand and held it tightly. You found her song, he whispered. You brought her back to them. Tears fell from his eyes, silent, unstoppable. I've kept this room closed for 4 years, he said. I couldn't bear to look at it. I told myself I was protecting them, but I was protecting myself. From the guilt, from the failure, from the truth that I wasn't enough. He looked at me, then really looked. You are enough, he said. You walked in with nothing, no money, no power, no name, and you gave them everything I couldn't. His thumb brushed over my knuckles, slow and deliberate. I'm terrified, Elena, he confessed. Terrified of how much I already love you. Terrified that this feeling, this burning, tearing thing in my chest will destroy me if I lose you. And I will lose you if my world touches you. Outside tires screeched on the drive, sharp, angry. Voices shouted. A door slammed. Vincent stiffened. He rose, pulling me up with him. "Stay here," he said urgently. "Lock the door behind me." Before I could answer, he kissed my forehead. Fierce, possessive, full of everything he could not yet say. "I'm going to end this tonight," he said. "Whatever it takes." He left. I locked the door as instructed, then sank back to the floor journal in my lap. The boys watched me. Mama Nico whispered. I crawled to the cribs one by one, touching each small hand. "I'm here," I whispered back. "I'm not going anywhere." Downstairs I heard the low rumble of confrontation, tense words, the slam of a car door, the growl of engines pulling away into the night. Vincent was out there fighting shadows to keep this fragile light alive. And inside me, the love that had taken root the moment he pulled me from the cold now grew wilder, hotter, more consuming than any hunger I had ever known. I pressed the journal to my heart and wept for Maria, for the boys, for Vincent, for the woman I had been, and for the woman I was becoming. A woman loved, a woman needed, a woman who for the first time in her life belonged. Night fell over the Gold Coast like a heavy curtain, thick clouds rolling in from Lake Michigan, blotting out the stars. The wind howled against the tall windows of the mansion, rattling panes that had never rattled before. Inside the nursery, the air felt charged electric with the promise of rain. I had not left the boys since Vincent's hurried departure hours earlier. I sat on the floor between the cribs, back against the wall, Maria's journal open in my lap. Every so often I hummed the lullaby again, soft, barely above a whisper. And each time one or another of the boys stirred, small sounds rising in response. A sigh, a coo, a faint attempt at mama. Each sound was a needle threading through my heart, stitching together pieces I had thought permanently broken. But the storm was coming fast. Thunder rumbled low at first, distant like a warning. Then lightning cracked across the sky, white and sudden, flooding the room with stark light. The boys flinched all four at once, tiny bodies tensing beneath their blankets. Mateo whimpered, a small, frightened sound that tore through me. I rose on unsteady legs, still weak from years of too little food and too little rest, and moved to the first crib. I placed my hand gently on Luca's chest, feeling the rapid flutter of his heart beneath my palm. "It's okay, sweet boy," I whispered. "It's just noise. Mama's here." The word slipped out naturally now, Mama, and each time I said it, something inside me cracked wider, open, raw, and bleeding with love. I had no right to claim. Thunder rolled again closer, shaking the house. The lights flickered, once dimmed, then steadied. Rain lashed the windows in furious sheets. The boys grew more restless. Nico's head turned from side to side, searching. Marco's fingers clenched and unclenched. Their small faces crumpled with fear. I moved from crib to crib, humming, touching, soothing as best I could with my thin, trembling hands. But the storm was merciless. Flash after flash, boom after boom. The boys' whimpers grew louder, more desperate. I felt it rising in my own chest, panic old and familiar. The same panic that had gripped me on nights when the wind cut through my coat like knives, when I huddled under viaducts praying the next gust would not be the one to end me. I had been so small then, so powerless. Now I was here, surrounded by warmth and wealth beyond imagining, and still I felt small. Footsteps pounded up the stairs, fast, urgent. Vincent burst through the doorcoat, dripping hair plastered to his forehead. His eyes found me immediately wild with something close to terror. He crossed the room in long strides, shedding his coat as he came. It fell to the floor in a wet heap. "They're frightened," I said, voice shaking. Vincent dropped to his knees beside me. He reached for Mateo, first hesitating only a second before lifting the boy carefully into his arms, slow, reverent, as though the child were made of glass. Mateo quieted almost instantly, small head resting against his father's chest. Vincent looked at me over the boy's fair hair, eyes shining with unshed tears. "I heard the thunder from downstairs," he said hoarsely. I thought I might lose you all in one night." Lightning flashed again. The room blazed white. Vincent shifted Mateo to one arm and reached for me with the other. His hand found mine, fingers threading through mine, gripping hard. "Stay close," he whispered. We moved together, him with Mateo, cradled against his chest, me guiding the other's blankets, soothing with touches and murmurs. The storm raged outside, but inside the nursery, a fragile circle formed Vincent, me, the four boys. We sat on the thick rug between the cribs, backs against the wall, bodies close. Thunder shook the house again. The boys flinched. Vincent began to rock, gently humming Maria's lullaby under his breath. His voice was rough, unsteady, but it carried. I joined him, our voices blending in the dim light. The boys calmed slowly, one by one. Their breathing evened. Small hands reached out toward Vincent, toward me. Then Nico made the sound. N. It was faint, broken, but unmistakable. My name. Vincent froze. His breath hitched. Nico tried again. Lena. Marco followed, soft, struggling Lena. Then Luca. Then Mateo. all four calling me by name. Vincent's arms tightened around Matteo. Tears slipped down his face, silent and unchecked. I felt the world tilt, dizziness crashing over me, numbness spreading from my chest outward. My vision blurred. I swayed. Vincent caught me with his free arm, pulling me against his side. "Easy," he murmured against my hair. "Breathe." I could not breathe. The weight of it all, the storm, the miracle, the man beside me, holding me as though I were the only thing keeping him anchored, crushed the air from my lungs. Vincent shifted Matteo to the crook of one arm and cupped my face with his other hand, forcing me to look at him. "Look at me," he said urgently. "Stay with me." I met his eyes, storm gray, flooded with emotion, so raw it hurt to see. "They called you by name," he whispered. "They know you. They trust you." His thumb brushed my cheek. "And God help me, Elena, so do I." Thunder rolled again, softer, now retreating. Vincent leaned in, forehead resting against mine. "I have fought wars in the streets," he said, voice trembling. "I have stared down men with guns and knives and never once felt fear like this. Fear of losing you. Fear of this love that's burning through every wall I built." His breath shuddered against my lips. "I don't know how to do this," he confessed. "I don't know how to be soft. I don't know how to be good. But for you, for them, I will learn. I will tear myself apart and rebuild if that's what it takes." I lifted my hand, trembling, and touched his face, tracing the line of his jaw, the silver at his temple, the tear tracks on his cheek. "You already are," I whispered. He closed his eyes, leaning into my touch like a man starved. Then slowly, carefully, he turned his head and pressed his lips to my palm. A kiss so tender, so reverent, it unraveled me completely. The storm outside quieted to a steady rain. Inside the nursery was still only the soft breathing of 4 small boys, and the ragged breathing of 2 broken people finding each other in the dark. Vincent opened his eyes. "I love you," he said simply. "I loved you the moment I pulled you from that cold sidewalk. I've been fighting it, denying it, terrified of it. But I can't anymore." The words landed like lightning, bright, searing, final. I felt it then, the full, violent surge of my own love, matching his burning just as fiercely. Tears streamed down my face. "I love you too," I whispered. "I'm scared. I'm so scared. I came from nothing. I'm still nothing. How can someone like me—" He silenced me with a finger against my lips. "You are everything," he said fiercely. "You are the miracle I didn't deserve. You are the light I thought I'd lost forever." He kissed my forehead, then each eyelid, then the corner of my mouth. Soft, trembling kisses that spoke of years of loneliness, finally breaking open. The boys slept peacefully now. Small hands relaxed. Vincent pulled me closer, wrapping me in his arms. Matteo still cradled between us. We sat like that as the rain softened to a gentle patter. No more words, only the quiet certainty that something unbreakable had been forged in the storm. And in the heart of the most powerful man in Chicago, a love so deep, so consuming, it would change everything forever. The rain had slowed to a steady drizzle by the time the nursery clock chimed midnight, its soft, measured tones cutting through the hush like a heartbeat. The boys slept deeply now, small chests, rising and falling in perfect rhythm, their faces peaceful in the dim glow of the nightlight shaped like a crescent moon. Vincent and I remained on the floor, backs against the wall, his arms still around my shoulders, my head resting against the solid warmth of his chest. Neither of us had spoken for a long time. There was no need. The storm had passed, but the one inside us raged on, silent, consuming, impossible to escape. Vincent's fingers traced slow, absent circles on my upper arm. Every few minutes his hold would tighten, as though he feared I might disappear if he let go. I understood the fear. I felt it too sharp and constant, like a blade pressed lightly against the skin. I shifted slightly. My body protested, muscles stiff from sitting too long on the floor, bones still carrying the deep ache of too many nights, curled on concrete, too many days without enough food to quiet the hollow inside. The flannel pajamas Vincent had provided were soft, but they could not erase the memory of threadbare layers that had never kept out the wind. Vincent noticed the small movement. "You're cold," he said quietly. "Not a question." I shook my head. I'm fine." He exhaled through his nose, a sound full of frustration and tenderness. He reached behind him, pulled a thick cashmere throw from the rocking chair, and draped it over both of us. The weight of it was luxurious, almost sinful. I stared at the fringe where it brushed my knee. So much softness, so much money woven into every thread. And I, a woman who had once wrapped herself in discarded newspapers to block the cold, sat beneath it, now wrapped in the arms of the man who owned the house that owned the blanket. The absurdity of it struck me suddenly, violently. A laugh bubbled up, small, broken, edged with hysteria. It escaped before I could stop it. Vincent tensed. What is it? I covered, my mouth tears springing fresh. I'm sorry. It's just, I used to sleep under the Clark Street Bridge with a piece of cardboard for a mattress. The wind would come off the river and cut right through me. I'd wake up with frost on my eyelashes. And now, I gestured weakly at the room at the throw at him. Now I'm here, in Kashmir. With you. It doesn't make sense. Vincent's face darkened. Not with anger at me, but with something deeper, older. Remorse so thick it seemed to coat his throat. I know it doesn't, he said hoarsely, and it never will. He shifted, turning to face me fully. His hand came up, cupping the side of my face. I see you, Elena, he said. Every time I look at you, I see the nights you spent freezing. I see the hunger that hollowed your cheeks. I see the shame that made you look down when people passed you on the sidewalk. And it tears me apart, because I walked those same streets for years. I saw women like you. I stepped over them. I told myself it wasn't my problem. His voice cracked, until it was. Until I saw you on that bench and realized I couldn't walk past one more time. Tears slipped down my face. I did not wipe them away. Vincent's thumb brushed them aside anyway, gentle, reverent. I hate what I was, he whispered. I hate the man who built an empire on fear and control while people like you suffered under the same sky. I hate that I can give you Kashmir and warm beds and safety now, but I can't give you back the years you lost. His hand trembled against my cheek. And I hate even more that I'm terrified you'll see that man when you look at me. That you'll see the blood on my hands, the deals in dark rooms, the enemies who would burn this house down if they could. That you'll run. I shook my head, tears falling faster. I see you, I whispered. I see the guilt you carry. I see the way you hold Mateo like he's the only thing keeping you from breaking. I see the way you look at me like I'm something precious you don't deserve. I reached up, placed my hand over his heart. It hammered beneath my palm, fierce, unsteady. I was nothing, I said softly. I had nothing. No one looked at me like I mattered. No one touched me with kindness. And you pulled me out of the cold. You gave me your coat, your scarf, your home. You gave me your son's first words. You gave me your heart. My voice broke. How could I run from that? Vincent closed his eyes. A tear escaped, tracing a slow path down his cheek. Then he spoke quiet, raw, almost a confession. There's something you need to know. I waited, heart pounding. My father, he was in the life. Low level, a runner. He got caught in a war between families when I was 15. They killed him in front of me. Left me bleeding on the sidewalk outside a butcher shop on Taylor Street. His voice dropped lower. I swore I'd never let anyone close again. Never let anyone depend on me. Because the people who depend on you die. He opened his eyes, dark, haunted. But you walked in and changed everything. And now I'm terrified all over again. Because if they come for me, if someone decides to settle a score, they'll come for you. For the boys. He swallowed hard. And I will burn this city to the ground before I let that happen. Silence wrapped around us, thick, heavy, sacred. I leaned forward slowly, rested my forehead against his. Then don't let it happen, I whispered. Keep us safe. Keep fighting. But don't shut me out. Vincent exhaled a shaky, broken sound. He lifted my chin with gentle fingers. I won't, he promised. I can't anymore. Then he kissed me. Not fiercely, not desperately, softly, reverently, like a man who had finally found something holy and was afraid to break it. His lips moved against mine, slow, trembling, full of everything he had held back for years. Grief, guilt, love so deep it hurt. I kissed him back, tentative at first, then deeper, letting the tears mingle between us. When we parted, both breathing hard, Vincent rested his forehead against mine again. I love you, he said, voice rough. More than power, more than this empire, more than anything I've ever known. I touched his face, tracing the lines of pain, the silver at his temples, the strength beneath the sorrow. I love you too, I whispered. And I'm not afraid. Outside, the rain had stopped. The city lay quiet beneath a clearing sky. Inside the nursery, 4 small boys slept on safe, and 2 broken people held each other in the dark, torn open, bleeding love, finally whole. Morning arrived in the Gold Coast mansion with a gentleness that felt almost apologetic after the storm. Pale October sunlight slipped through the nursery curtains, touching the crib rails with soft gold. The boys slept on faces relaxed, small hands curled loosely against their blankets. For the first time in 4 years, the room did not feel like a tomb. It felt like the beginning of something fragile and precious. I had not slept. Vincent and I had stayed on the floor until the small hours wrapped in the Kashmir throw, speaking in whispers, confessions, fears, promises. When the first light appeared, he had kissed my forehead. murmured that he had business to settle, and left me with a look that said he would return as quickly as the city allowed. Now I sat in the rocking chair, Maria's journal closed on my lap, watching the boys breathe. My body ached in new ways, aches born of safety rather than suffering. The hollow places inside me, carved by endless hunger and cold nights under viaducts, still throbbed, but the pain felt distant, muffled by the warmth of this room, this house, this impossible new life. Mrs. Callahan appeared at the door carrying a tray, fresh coffee, warm croissants, sliced fruit arranged like a small work of art. She set it down quietly, her kind eyes lingering on me with a tenderness that made my throat tighten. "You look rested, miss," she said softly. I managed a small smile. "I think I am, thank you." She hesitated, then spoke again, voice low. "Mr. Moretti asked me to tell you he'll be back before noon. He also asked that you stay inside today. The city is restless." I nodded. Restless. I understood the word now, not as a feeling, but as a warning. Mrs. Callahan left, and I ate slowly, savoring each bite, as though it might be taken away. The croissant flaked buttery and perfect. The coffee was rich, dark, fragrant. Every swallow reminded me of the dumpster behind the bakery on Division Street, the half-eaten bagel I had fought rats for. Shame burned low in my chest. Shame for the past. Shame for the present. Luxury I still felt I had stolen. The morning passed in quiet stillness. I read to the boys from one of the untouched board books simple stories of trains and animals. Their eyes followed the pages, small fingers twitching with interest. Every so often, one would whisper Lena or Mama, and each time the sound pierced me anew, filling the hollow places with something warm and terrifying. Around 11 o'clock, the house grew louder, doors opening and closing, voices in the hallway, the low rumble of engines outside. I heard Vincent before I saw him. The firm, measured tread of his shoes on the marble stairs, the way the air seemed to shift when he entered a room. He stepped through the doorway, wearing the same dark coat from the night before, now dry collar turned up against the lingering chill. His face was drawn shadows beneath his eyes, but when he saw me in the rocking chair, something in him softened. He crossed to me without a word, knelt beside the chair, and took my hand. His fingers were cold. He must have been outside for hours. "You stayed," he said quietly. "I promised." Vincent pressed his lips to my knuckles once, twice, then rested his forehead against our joined hands. "I have something to show you." He stood and helped me rise. My legs were still unsteady. He steadied me with an arm around my waist. We moved to the small table near the window where a crisp white envelope waited. He handed it to me. The envelope bore the logo of a prestigious pediatric therapy center in downtown Chicago, gold lettering, thick paper. Inside was a formal letter offering me a position full-time caregiver consultant, generous salary, benefits, training with the best specialists in the country. They mentioned remarkable progress observed by a nurse who had visited discreetly, progress they attributed to an extraordinary natural gift. I read the words twice. My vision blurred. "They want me," I whispered. "Me." Vincent watched me carefully. "They do." I looked up at him. "How?" One of the night nurses sent a report, anonymously. She said she had never seen anything like it. The boys responding, speaking, moving. She thought the center should know. My hands shook so badly the paper rattled. This is everything I could have dreamed of. A real job. A future. Independence. Vincent's face remained calm, but I saw the storm behind his eyes, raw, violent, barely contained. And yet he said quietly, "You look like you're about to break." Tears filled my eyes. "Because if I take it, I leave. I leave them. I leave you." He exhaled a long, shuddering breath. "You could have both. The center is downtown. You could commute. Or—" He stopped. I waited. Vincent stepped closer, voice dropping to a rough whisper. "Or you could stay. Not as staff. Not as a hired hand. As family." The words landed like a physical blow. I swayed. He caught me. "Family," I repeated the word, foreign, enormous. Vincent cupped my face with both hands, thumbs brushing my tears. "I have spent my life taking," he said. "Taking territory. Taking loyalty. Taking lives when I had to. I never knew how to give. Until you gave my sons their voices. You gave me back my heart. And I want to give you something in return, not money, not a job, not protection out of guilt." His voice cracked. "I want to give you a home. A place where you belong. Where no one will ever make you sleep on concrete again. Where you wake up every morning knowing you are loved beyond reason." He swallowed hard. "I want to marry you, Elena. Not today. Not tomorrow. When you're ready. But I want you to know that's where this is going. That's where I want this to go." My knees buckled. He caught me again, lowered us both to the floor so we knelt facing each other. The boys watched from their cribs, quiet, curious, small hands reaching toward us. Vincent's eyes searched mine, desperate, pleading, terrified. "I know I'm asking too much," he whispered. "I know my world is dangerous. I know I carry shadows you shouldn't have to touch. But I swear to you I will spend every day making it safe. I will dismantle what I have to. I will walk away from what I must. For you. For them. For us." Tears streamed down my face. I thought of the nights I had begged the wind to stop. Of the mornings I had woken with frost on my skin, too weak to stand. Of the humiliation of asking strangers for quarters, of hiding in alleys when men looked too long, of believing no one would ever see me as more than a ghost. And now this man, this powerful, broken, beautiful man, was on his knees offering me everything. I reached for him, fingers trembling, and touched his face. "Yes," I whispered. Vincent's breath stopped. "Yes," I said again, stronger. "I want to stay. I want to be family. I want to be yours." He made a sound, half sob, half laugh, and pulled me into his arms. We clung to each other on the nursery floor, tears mingling, hearts hammering in unison. The boys made soft sounds, small, joyful noises that filled the room like light. Vincent kissed me slow, deep, full of promise and fire. When we parted, he rested his forehead against mine. "I will protect this," he vowed. "With everything I have." Outside the city hummed engines' voices, the restless pulse of Chicago. But inside this room, redemption had begun. And love, so fierce, so complete, had finally found a home. Weeks slipped by in the Gold Coast mansion. Like pages turning in a book I had never believed I would be allowed to read. October 2025 gave way to the first sharp chill of November, and with it came a quiet transformation that felt both miraculous and fragile, as though one wrong breath might shatter everything. The nursery no longer echoed with silence. Toys, soft stuffed animals, wooden blocks painted in gentle pastels, now stayed scattered across the thick rug instead of lined up untouched on shelves. Adaptive swings had been installed in the sunlit garden room downstairs, their gentle motion accompanied by the boys' small, clumsy laughter. Luca, Marco, Nico, and Matteo made sounds every day now, soft coos, attempts at words, tiny bursts of joy when I entered the room. Each one felt like a gift I had no right to accept, yet I received them anyway, holding them close like the warm meals and clean blankets I had once dreamed of in the cold. I walked the halls of the mansion with bare feet, the marble floors no longer intimidating. Mrs. Callahan had quietly replaced my borrowed pajamas with clothes that fit simple cotton dresses, soft sweaters, warm socks, all new, all chosen with care. I still caught myself touching the fabrics in wonder, remembering the nights I had wrapped myself in a torn plastic trash bag to block the wind off the Chicago River. The memory burned humiliating vivid, but it burned less brightly now, softened by the steady presence of Vincent beside me. He had changed too, though the change was quieter, deeper. The man who once moved through rooms like a storm now moved with deliberate gentleness. Meetings that used to keep him away until dawn now ended early. Phones that once rang incessantly with urgent coded demands now stayed silent for longer stretches. I heard the low voices in his study late at night, tense negotiations, promises of transition, careful steps toward legitimacy. He never spoke of the details, only held me afterward, arms tight as though anchoring himself to the life he was trying to build. One afternoon, as the pale November sun slanted through the tall windows of the garden room, Vincent came home earlier than usual. He found me on the cushioned bench beside the swings, pushing gently while the boys giggled small, imperfect sounds that filled the air like music. He stopped in the doorway coat, still on watching us. I felt his gaze before I saw him. When I looked up, his eyes were bright, wet, full of something I could not quite name. He crossed the room, slowly knelt before the bench and took my hands. "They laugh," he said hoarsely. "They laugh because of you." I shook my head. "Because of us." Vincent's fingers tightened around mine. "I've spent years believing I could buy safety," he said. "Build walls, hire guards, control every variable. But none of it brought them laughter. None of it brought me peace." He looked at the boys, his sons, our sons now, in every way that mattered, then back at me. "You did." Tears slipped down my cheeks. I did not hide them. Vincent rose, pulled me gently to my feet, and led me out to the garden terrace. The air was crisp, scented with fallen leaves and the distant lake. He wrapped his arms around me from behind, chin resting on my shoulder. "I've made decisions," he said quietly. "The last of the old operations, the ones that carried the most risk, are being dismantled. Quietly. Cleanly. I'm keeping only what can be made legitimate real estate shipping investments. The rest, I'm walking away." I turned in his arms, searching his face. "Why now?" "Because I finally understand what I was protecting," he said. "It wasn't power. It wasn't territory. It was this." He nodded toward the house, toward the boys' laughter, drifting through the open doors. It was you. His voice cracked on the last word. I've carried guilt for so long it became part of me, he continued. Guilt for the lives I took, guilt for the ones I failed, guilt for the man I let myself become. But loving you, loving them, it's burning the guilt away, not erasing it, just making it smaller, making room for something better. I pressed my palm to his chest, feeling the steady, powerful beat beneath. You're already better, I whispered. You always were. You just couldn't see it. Vincent closed his eyes, leaned into my touch. I see it now, he said, because you showed me. We stood like that for a long time, wrapped in each other, the city humming far below, the boys' soft sounds floating on the breeze. Later that evening, after the boys had been fed, bathed, and tucked into their cribs with kisses and lullabies, Vincent led me to the rooftop terrace. The sky above Chicago was clear, stars faint against the glow of the city lights. He had arranged a small table, candles, warm cider, a blanket draped over 2 chairs. We sat side by side, shoulders touching. I used to come up here alone, he said quietly. After Maria died, I'd sit and stare at the skyline, telling myself the view was enough, that control was enough, that I didn't need anything else. He turned to me. I was wrong. Vincent reached into his coat pocket and withdrew a small velvet box. My breath caught. He opened it. Inside lay a simple diamond ring, elegant, understated, catching the candlelight like captured starlight. I know it's soon, he said. I know you're still healing, still learning to believe this is real. But I need you to know that every day I wake up beside you, every time I hear the boys call your name, every time I look at you and see the woman who saved us all, I fall harder. His voice trembled. Marry me, Elena. When you're ready. Tomorrow. Next year. Whenever you say. Just say you'll stay. Say you'll be mine. Say you'll let me spend the rest of my life proving I can be the man you deserve. Tears blurred my vision. I looked at the ring, then at him, at the powerful, broken, beautiful man who had pulled me from the cold and given me everything. I lifted my hand. Yes, I whispered. Vincent slid the ring onto my finger with shaking hands. It fit perfectly. He pulled me into his arms, kissing me with a tenderness that stole my breath, slow, deep, full of promise and fire. When we parted, he rested his forehead against mine. I love you, he said. More than I knew it was possible to love. I love you too, I whispered back. More than I ever believed I could be loved. We stayed on the terrace until the candles burned low, wrapped in the blanket, watching the city lights glitter below. The past still lingered, my thin frame that remembered hunger, his hands that remembered darker things, but it no longer defined us. We were new. We were whole. And in the quiet of that November night, with the boys sleeping safely below and the future unfolding before us, love had finally won. A new dawn had come. The first snow of the season dusted the Gold Coast streets on the last night of October 2025, turning the city into something soft and deceptive. Inside the mansion, everything felt warm, contained, almost sacred. The boys had fallen asleep early after an afternoon of gentle play in the garden room, their small laughter still echoing in my ears as I moved quietly through the upstairs hallway. Vincent had been in his study for hours, finalizing the last legitimate contracts that would sever the darkest threads of his old life. I had left him with a soft kiss on the cheek and a promise to wait up. I never made it to the bedroom. The house alarms shrieked at exactly 11:43, sharp, piercing, unnatural. Lights flashed red along the corridors. Mrs. Callahan's voice came over the intercom, calm but urgent. Intruders. Safe room. Now. My heart slammed against my ribs. I ran. The nursery door was closest. I burst inside, breath ragged, and found the boys already stirring, eyes wide, small bodies tensing at the unfamiliar sound. I scooped Matteo into my arms. First he was the lightest, then reached for Nico, balancing them both against my chest. Luca and Marco whimpered. I whispered lullabies between gasps, trying to keep my voice steady. Footsteps thundered below, too many, too fast. Voices shouted in clipped anger. Glass shattered somewhere on the first floor. I backed toward the corner, heart pounding so violently I felt dizzy, the room tilting. This could not be happening. Not here. Not now. Not when everything had finally begun to heal. The door flew open. 3 masked men in black stepped inside, gloved, silent weapons, holstered but visible. Their eyes swept the room, then locked on the cribs. One of them spoke, voice muffled but cold. The children. Take them. I pressed myself against the wall. The boys clutched to me. My arms shook. My legs threatened to give out. No, I whispered. Then louder, trembling but fierce. No. The lead man stepped forward. Step aside, lady. We don't want you. Behind him in the hallway, I heard Vincent, his voice raw, commanding closer than I expected. Get away from them. He appeared in the doorway, coat gone sleeves, rolled a pistol in his hand but pointed at the floor. His face was a mask of controlled fury, but his eyes when they found mine were wild with something deeper terror. The intruders turned. One raised his hand slowly. Easy, Moretti. This isn't personal. Vincent's voice dropped to a lethal whisper. It's very personal. He stepped into the room, positioning himself between the men and us. The air thickened, tense, electric, every breath measured. I saw it then, the betrayal written in the way the lead man's shoulders relaxed slightly, as though he had expected this confrontation, but not the depth of Vincent's rage. You sent them, Vincent said quietly. Not a question. The man shrugged. Business is business, Vinny. You're going soft. Word got out. Some people don't like soft. Vincent's jaw clenched. You were my right hand for 15 years, Tony. I trusted you with my life. With theirs. Tony, the name landed like a stone in my stomach. The same Tony who had once promised me shelter, then locked me in a storage unit and taken my last $20. The same man whose face I had seen in Vincent's surveillance photos weeks ago. Vincent's hand tightened on the pistol. You used what you knew. You used her pain. You used my son's. Tony spread his hands. I gave you a chance to step back. You didn't listen. Vincent's voice cracked just once. You gave me nothing. The room held its breath. Then Tony moved fast, reaching for his side. Vincent fired once into the floor inches from Tony's foot. The shot echoed like thunder. The other two men froze. Vincent's voice was ice. Walk out. Now, or I stop being careful. Tony stared at him for a long heartbeat. Then he nodded once. They backed out slowly, hands visible. Vincent followed them to the hallway, never turning his back. I sank to the floor, boys still clutched to me, trembling so hard my teeth chattered. Matteo buried his face in my neck. Luca reached for Vincent's leg as he returned. Vincent knelt beside us, hands shaking as he took the boys one by one, checking them, kissing their heads, whispering apologies. When he reached me, he pulled us all into his arms, awkward, desperate, fierce. I'm sorry, he whispered against my hair. God, Elena, I'm so sorry. I clung to him, tears soaking his shirt. They're safe. We're safe. He shook his head. Because of you. You shielded them. You stood between them and danger when I wasn't here. His voice broke entirely. I almost lost you. All of you. Because of me. Because of who I was. I cupped his face, forcing him to look at me. You're not that man anymore, I said. You fought for us. You chose us. Vincent pressed his forehead to mine, tears falling freely now. I'll end it, he vowed. Tonight. Every last tie. Every last shadow. I swear it. Outside, sirens wailed, distant approaching. The betrayal had been contained, but the cost lingered in the air like smoke. Vincent carried the boys back to their cribs, tucking them in with hands that still trembled. Then he returned to me, pulling me into his lap on the rug, wrapping us both in the cashmere throw. I saw you stand there, he whispered. Thin, shaking, exhausted from a life I can't even imagine. And you didn't run. You protected them. You protected what we have. His arms tightened. I don't deserve you, he said hoarsely. I never will. But I will spend every remaining day earning the right to keep you safe. I rested my head against his chest, listening to the frantic beat of his heart slowly steady. You already have, I whispered. We stayed like that until the police arrived, quiet statements, careful questions, the house slowly returning to stillness. When the last officer left, Vincent led me to our room. He helped me into bed, pulled the covers up, then slid in beside me, pulling me close. I love you, he said into the dark. More than life. More than anything. I kissed him, slow, trembling, full of everything we had almost lost. I love you too, I whispered. And I'm not going anywhere. Outside, the first snow continued to fall, soft, silent, covering the city's sharp edges. Inside, our world had been shaken to its core. But it had not broken. And in the heart of the storm, love burned brighter than ever, fierce, unyielding, eternal. The hospital room smelled of antiseptic and fresh rain. Outside the tall windows of Chicago Memorial, the city skyline shimmered through a steady November drizzle, streetlights blurring into golden streaks against the wet glass. It was the second night after the raid, after the masked men had stormed the nursery, after I had thrown myself between the boys and danger, after the single bullet had torn through my shoulder instead of finding one of the children. The wound was clean, stitched, bandaged. The doctors said I would heal completely. But the pain inside, deeper, sharper, would not be so easily mended. Vincent had not left my side. He sat in the narrow chair beside the bed, elbows on his knees, face buried in his hands. His dark coat lay draped over the backrest. His sleeves were rolled to the elbows, revealing the faint bruises from the struggle. Raindrops tapped softly against the window, a quiet counterpoint to the steady beep of the monitor beside me. I watched him in the dim light, this powerful man reduced to something raw and human. His shoulders shook once only before he forced them still. He lifted his head. His eyes, storm gray, red-rimmed, found mine. "You could have died," he said, voice hoarse, almost broken. "Because of me." I reached for him with my good hand. My fingers trembled. "I'm here." Vincent took my hand carefully as though it might shatter. He pressed his lips to my knuckles, lingering there, breathing me in. "I saw you," he whispered against my skin, standing in front of them. Thin, exhausted, still carrying the weight of every cold night you ever spent under a bridge every morning. You woke up too weak to stand. And you didn't run. You shielded my sons, our sons, with your body. Tears slipped from his eyes, silent, unstoppable. "I have spent my life believing power could protect what I loved," he continued. "I built walls. I made deals in dark rooms. I told myself control was the only safety. And in one moment you showed me the truth: love is the only shield that matters." He lifted his gaze to mine. The storm inside him had quieted, leaving only clarity and a fierce, burning certainty. "I'm done," he said. "The empire is finished. I've transferred every remaining asset into legitimate channels. The last names have been erased from the books. Tony and the others, they're gone. Not by violence, by choice, by the simple truth that some wars are not worth winning." He swallowed hard. "I'm walking away. For good. For you. For them. For the life we deserve." I felt the words settle over me like warm rain. Dizziness swept through me, not from pain, but from the sheer weight of what he was giving up. Power, fear, the only identity he had known. Vincent rose, slowly moved to the side of the bed, and sat on the edge. He took both my hands in his, careful of the IV line, careful of the bandage. "I love you, Elena," he said. "I loved you the moment I saw you on that bench, shivering in a coat held together with tape. I loved you when you first stepped into my home and my sons spoke your name. I loved you when you stood between danger and innocence without hesitation. And I will love you every day for the rest of my life." He leaned down, forehead resting against mine. "Marry me," he whispered. "Not because of what I have, not because of what I can give. Marry me because we belong to each other. Skin color, past, pain, money, poverty, none of it matters. Love sees through all of it. Love chooses anyway." Tears streamed down my face. I lifted my good hand, cupped his cheek. "Yes," I whispered. "Yes." Vincent kissed me, then slow, deep, trembling with everything we had almost lost. Rain pattered against the window. The city lights glowed beyond the glass. In that small, sterile room, something unbreakable was forged. Months later, the Gold Coast mansion had become something new. The nursery doors stayed open. Toys stayed scattered. Laughter, real clumsy, growing stronger, filled the halls every day. The boys called us both Mama and Dada, now their small voices clearer with every sunrise. Vincent had kept his promise. No more shadows, no more late-night meetings. He worked in daylight now, real estate investments, quiet philanthropy that rebuilt neighborhoods he once controlled through fear. The man who had once commanded empires now commanded only breakfast trays and bedtime stories. And love, true, fierce, unconditional love, had become the greatest power of all. Knowledge is the quiet light that guides us through darkness. Knowledge shows us that compassion can heal what power never could. Knowledge reminds us that no past is too broken to mend. Knowledge teaches us to choose love over fear every single time. Knowledge opens the heart to see beyond appearances and into the soul. Lesson after lesson unfolds when we dare to be vulnerable. Lesson upon lesson appears when we choose mercy instead of control. Lesson by lesson we learn that true wealth lies in the hands that reach out, not the ones that grasp. Lesson after lesson reveals that real strength is found in gentleness. Lesson by lesson we discover that love, regardless of skin color, wealth, or poverty, is the only force that truly redeems. To everyone watching this video, I wish you good health, a joyful life, and daily peace. Goodbye for now, and I promise to see you again in the next video. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe to the YouTube channel Alex Truths, like this video, and share it with someone who needs a little hope today. We upload engaging, heartfelt stories every day. Tell me in the comments, how did this story make you feel? Does it connect to something real in your own life? Share your emotions. I read every comment and truly listen to the deep feelings you express. Until next time. Disclaimer. All stories on this channel are fictional and created solely for entertainment purposes. Any resemblance to real people, events, or places is purely coincidental.